Hey guys, plot recap here. Today I'm going to explain the movie Aftermath, released in the year 2021. All relevant links and information for the film will be in the description down below. Before we know more about it, you can support the channel by liking, subscribing, and activating the notifications. It's free and it really helps us to keep growing. Now let's dive in. The movie starts with Kevin and his crewmates cleaning up a house smothered with blood. These crime scene cleaners are scrubbing off the aftermath of a murder and suicide at a house owned by Claudia and her husband Robert. The scene switches to Kevin with his wife Natalie at home. The couple has had issues since Natalie cheated, so they decide to try couples therapy. Soon after, we see the therapist advise them to try a change of environment to repair their relationship. When Kevin gets home from work the next day, he tells Natalie that he wants to buy Claudia's house because she's offering a low price. Even though Natalie is reluctant, she eventually agrees on the condition that Kevin will return to college. Soon after, we see Kevin and Natalie getting a tour of the house. Even though Robert doesn't want to sell the house at such a low price, they have no option. Later, the couple moves into their new house along with their dog, Odie. Natalie's sister Danny joins the couple to unpack, but immediately points out that the house is creepy. Just a few moments later, Odie starts barking at a closet. When Natalie and Danny decide to check it out, they find nothing except scratch marks on the walls. When the couple finally goes to sleep, Odie wakes them up in the middle of the night. Kevin gets up to accompany him to go pee. When they get to the stairs, Odie refuses to come upstairs and starts barking at a shadow behind Kevin. Kevin doesn't think much of this and comes back to bed. However, Natalie asks him if he went to the bathroom because she heard somebody. Since it wasn't Kevin, the two check if there's anyone inside, but find nothing. As Natalie heads to work the next morning, she sees a truck parked across from the house. The man drives away immediately, making her suspicious. At the office, Natalie gets an amazing offer from an investor for her clothing business. At the same time, Kevin goes to his first class at college and teams up with a classmate named Avery for a project. Later that night, Kevin surprises Natalie with a romantic dinner, and the two finally start to make amends. Unfortunately, creepy things keep happening in the house, such as a record player turning on out of nowhere and the closet door mysteriously opening behind Natalie. The next morning, Natalie steps out of the shower to see the words, "Hi beautiful," written in the fog of the mirror. When she goes to thank Kevin for his sweet message, he doesn't seem to know anything about it. The scene switches to Danny, trying to guilt Natalie into hosting a dinner for their mother at her new house. Even though Natalie argues with her, she eventually gives in. Then, Natalie sees Odie barking at his ball stuck underneath the bed. As she returns with a tool to get it out, the ball is already on the bedspread. If all these weird things aren't enough, Natalie runs into her ex-lover Nick at a meeting. It turns out Nick is the one who helped Natalie get this new job and advises her not to throw this opportunity away based on their past. That night, Kevin is busy working on his project with Avery, so Natalie goes to sleep alone in the house. However, she wakes up with an eerie feeling and hears footsteps outside the door. A hand appears beside the door, so she gets up to check, but someone covers her mouth from behind. Later, Kevin comes home to find Natalie sleeping on the couch. When Natalie tells him what happened, he doesn't believe her. When they go to therapy the next day, Kevin mentions that Natalie is just seeing things around the house, and the couple argues on their way home. Meanwhile, Danny arrives at the house to prepare for the family dinner. Creepy things start happening again as she hears Odie barking violently. She goes downstairs to check on him and finds the kitchen faucet turned on and turns it off. Halfway up the stairs, Danny hears the faucet running again. She cautiously walks back to the kitchen but hears loud thudding noises from upstairs. She quickly prepares to run away, but goes back upstairs to grab her phone. When she gets to the room, her phone has disappeared from the bed and she suddenly hears loud footsteps. Scared and confused, she locks the bedroom door and hides inside the bathroom. When she sees the doorknob turning, she steps inside the closet. Before she knows it, something pulls her from behind. Soon after, Kevin and Natalie come home to find nobody there. Natalie starts getting angry at Danny because she thinks that Danny missed the dinner on purpose. However, things don't end too well as Natalie and her mother get into a screaming match. In the middle of all that yelling, they suddenly hear glass shattering outside. Kevin rushes outside to find that someone threw a Molotov at their car. The couple reports the incident to the police, but don't find much help there. Later, Natalie visits Claudia and asks her about the house's history. Claudia explains that her brother Jay and his wife Erin used to live there. When the two started cheating on each other, things fell apart. Claudia also mentions that she doesn't believe her brother killed Erin or himself. When Natalie leaves, Robert chases her outside and asks if she and Kevin are willing to sell the house back to him. When Natalie refuses, Robert becomes irritated because he feels the couple has taken advantage of his grieving wife. Elsewhere, Kevin and Avery are at the park where Odie suddenly faints. At the vet's office, the couple finds out that Odie has eaten something poisonous. The doctor suggests they put him to sleep peacefully, and the couple agrees. When the couple gets home, they find a bouquet at the door from Nick and get into another argument. That night, they wake up to loud noises again, but can't find the source anywhere. When a cop shows up, Natalie finally opens up about all the horrifying incidents in this house. The officer finds it suspicious that she didn't report them earlier, but Natalie explains that her husband didn't let her. Soon after, the couple agrees to install cameras inside the house with mobile-controlled house locks. The next day at work, Kevin suddenly starts throwing up uncontrollably. Elsewhere, Natalie gets penalized for not meeting the deadline to deliver new clothes. Later, Natalie calls Nick to confront him, but he says that he didn't send the flowers. When she tries to send a picture of the card to Nick, Natalie sees photos of her sleeping. Suddenly, the record player starts playing again. When Natalie hears thudding noises from upstairs, she calls 911 immediately. Then, she sees that it's just a tree banging against her window and calls the dispatcher to cancel her request. Suddenly, Natalie sees a shadow figure in her office. She runs to hide inside her bedroom but notices the shadow in the mirror. She tries to leave the room but can't unlock the door. Downstairs, Kevin arrives and looks for Natalie. However, Natalie is cornered by someone upstairs and jumps into the pool as a hand tries to grab her. Kevin manages to save her and calls the cops, but they don't find anything. The next day, the police officer shows Kevin footage of Natalie running with nobody chasing her. On their walk back from therapy, Kevin suddenly falls unconscious. At the hospital, the doctor tells Natalie that they found nerium, a lethal poisoning substance, in his bloodstream. That night, a teenager named Travis shows up at their door with flowers and starts complimenting Natalie. She tries to close the door, but he forces his way inside before trying to take advantage of her. Thankfully, Natalie manages to stab him with scissors. When Natalie and Kevin go to report this incident, the officer reveals that Robert is the one who's behind everything, from sending Natalie flowers to inviting strangers over for a one-night stand. But when Robert is in custody, he still denies going inside the house or poisoning anyone. The next day in class, Kevin gets a text from Natalie asking him not to come home tonight. Later, when he's at Avery's house, he gets a call from Natalie that he ignores. After he listens to her voicemail, he calls Natalie back to ask her why she would ask him to come home after texting him not to. However, Natalie denies ever sending a text like that and goes to check the footage from a camcorder she set up near her bed. Here, Natalie sees a man crawling out from underneath her bed, staring at her and then using her phone. Suddenly, the man comes from behind and sedates her. When she wakes up, Natalie finds herself chained to a bed with TV monitors everywhere. As Natalie tries to escape, a man suddenly enters. His name is Otto, the man Erin was cheating with. Turns out he built secret passageways across the house to make sure Erin was near him. However, when Erin chose Jay, Otto got angry and murdered both of them. Natalie doesn't want Otto to kill her, so she lets him kiss her. When Otto sees Kevin coming home on the security cameras, he tries to sedate Natalie again. However, she asks him to kill Kevin so they can be together. As Otto runs through the passageways, Natalie escapes from the chains and removes her gag. When Kevin sees someone on the bed, he assumes it's Natalie and gets into bed. However, when he sees blood on his fingers, he sees it's Danny's dead body. Otto sneaks up from behind Kevin to ambush him. Luckily, Natalie screams loud enough for Kevin to turn around and stop Otto's attack. While Natalie frantically calls the police, Otto easily overpowers Kevin and knocks him out. Natalie tries to hide from Otto, but he finds her in the office and tries to sedate her again. Thankfully, Natalie flashes a light in his face and bashes the device on his head. However, Otto quickly recovers and tries to choke Natalie. Then, Kevin shows up from behind and holds Otto as Natalie stabs him in the chest. Later, the cops arrive, and the couple finally puts an end to all this chaos. In the final scene of the movie, the couple moves out of the house, but as they leave, the closet door closes behind them again.